Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 6th of May of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. But before we start, let's congratulate Karl III. Today he became King of United Kingdom officially. Today there was an official coronation process, and there were a lot of people who visited this event, and a lot of representatives of different countries were invited to this event. As you know, the president of Russian Federation, neither as the president of Belarus and many other countries weren't invited to this event. For example, the France was delegation of France was represented by the president of France, Macron. For example, the Canada was represented by the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Everybody, all of them visited the United Kingdom today. And for example, the United States of America was presented by the wife of Joe Biden. The old Joe couldn't visit this country because some sources are saying that it's very difficult for him to travel a lot abroad. So that's why they're trying to minimize his visits abroad in this year or something like this. For example, the delegation of Germany was presented by the Steinmeier. So the gang wasn't the full. Now let's talk a little bit about Zelensky. If you remember, a few days ago we discussed about his visit in Finland and in the Netherlands. Yesterday he was in Poland, and yesterday in the evening he published another video, and according to the atmosphere where he published his video, we understand that Zelensky returned to Ukraine, and currently possibly he's located in his bunker in Kiev. The Russians haven't made any attempt to attack Zelensky during these days, so we'll see what is going to be next. Now, another important update is coming from the territory of Russian Federation. For example, today, the Ukrainian Ukrainian special forces made another terrorist attack, and as a result of that attack, another Russian blogger was damaged, was wounded, heavily wounded. As you can see, this is his car that was did explode by the mine. And by the, let's say, 8 p.m. of the local time, the Russians have already captured the executor of that attack. And he told us that he was captured, he was hired by the Ukrainian special forces, and he was paid for this operation. As you can see, the Ukrainians intensified their terrorist attack on the territory of Russian Federation. And as you can see, mainly they are targeting the influencers, the people who has like blogs, they have like people who follows them, so those who can influence and make opinion in Russian Federation. So as you can see, it's very interesting from the Ukrainians, interesting tactic from the Ukrainian side. And I'll remind you that a month ago, 34 days ago, the Ukrainians made another terrorist attack in St. Petersburg, where they killed another blogger, Vladlen Tatarsky. Now let's go to the Ukraine and let's talk about, as you can see, there are some icons with the Russian flag about the eastern part of Ukraine. And if you know, today's Prigozhin, the head of Wagner's, published another video this morning. He was saying that the Wagner's lost another group of soldiers, a little bit less than 100 soldiers, and he also added that Ukrainians loses from 400 to 600 soldiers per day, and he told us and confirmed that he was going to be replaced by the Akhmat special forces. As you know, Akhmat special forces is the force that under control of Ramzan Kadyrov. He is the head of Chechenska Republic, and also later this head of Chechenska Republic and also the position of head of special force Akhmat Kadyrov published his own video where he was saying that he is ready to replace Wagner's, and that he also added that special force Akhmat has already started this replacement process, and he promised that by the 10th of May everything will be finished, and the last block of Bakhmut will be taken by special forces Akhmat. And also very interesting updates coming from Bakhmut itself. No matter the process of the replacement process and so on, the Russians published yesterday in the evening how they were attacking the western fortification of Bakhmut. As you can see, this is the video from the most powerful fortification area, from the fortress of Bakhmut, as the Ukrainian sources are calling this part of western Bakhmut. As you can see, the Russians are using thermobaric weapon, and as you can see, this entire part is under fire. and it's terrible, of course, terrible picture. I believe that the loss of the Ukrainians were heaviest these days, these hours, and so on. And later in the morning today, the Russians published another video of this region, what was under fire under those type of weapon. And as you can see, almost the entire western part of Bakhmut is damaged, almost ruined. And furthermore, the Russians published another video of destroying of another building in this part of Bakhmut, and some sources are saying that explosion was made by the Ukrainians during the retreat process. And anyways, for now it's very difficult to determine who exactly destroyed that building, but as you can see, the situation for the Ukrainians is getting worse and worse, and I believe that something tells me that there are very small, but still there are chances that the Russians will be able to capture Bakhmut before the 9th of May. Now let's go to the ground, and let's start, of course, we'll continue with Bakhmut. And as you can see, this is exactly the building that was destroyed. And as you can see, this building is located on the corner. That was a fire position of the Ukrainian forces. And of course, that was made for the Russians to ease their progress and development inside of this western fortification, western fortress. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce clashings, the Ukrainians lost 185 soldiers, 9 armored vehicles, including 1 tank, 3 artillery systems, and 1 Raider INTPQ-48. If we base our understanding of the situation based on the Ministry of Defense report, we see that there is some kind of reducing of intensifying of clashes, because the level of losses is the lowest maybe since for the last 2 weeks. We understand, we can explain this because of some kind of rotation process. We can explain the situation with the replacement process and so on. But anyway, we saw the video. Yesterday's video about this attack in this area. We saw the video of current when the Ukrainians started destroying this building. Anyway, we see that the story is going to the end. Now let's go to the Western sources map and let's just try to update, try to analyze. So as you understand, according to the video we got, this building was destroyed under fire. So let's update this area, showing the area that was detonated and where the building was destroyed. So as you can see, as I understand, the Russians are currently trying to attack in this area, or at least they were trying to destroy the Ukrainian fire position that blocked the Russian progress in this area. Possibly the Russians will try to split this area by attacking deep inside of this western fortification. The other Russian sources are saying that there is a significant progress of the Russians in this part, and they're trying to connect the Russian forces on the northern part of Western Bakhmut with those forces who are currently pushing in direction of Khromovo in this direction. The Russians established a very powerful blockade, very powerful barrier, let's call it like this, in this area, that blocked the Ukrainians' reinforcements and that blocked the Ukrainian reserves that the Ukrainians are trying to send in direction of Khromovo to help Ukrainian guys in Khromovo to hold this territory. But as we understand, the Ukrainians don't have any chances to do this, and meanwhile the Russians are attacking Khromovo from the north and from the east. And I expect that even this weekend we are going to see a progress in this area. By the way, one more time to add that the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation haven't added any piece of information about capturing of any block inside the western part of Bakhmut. So we can say that today there were no progress on the ground, just the local clashes, fierce fightings, and the process of reducing of armies of each other. But based on the report of Prigozhin, today there was another day of reducing of Ukrainian forces in this area. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation also added that during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to shut down a significant number of Ukrainian drones. Up to 32 drones were destroyed during the previous day, and this is the highest level of drones that Ukrainians tried to send to the south, and mainly those drones were destroyed, of course, in the south area, where the Ukrainians are trying to make some kind of record, trying to understand, trying to discover and spot the Russian position, because we understand that soon they're going to launch their counter-offensive counteroffensive operation, and a lot of things, a lot of events took place exactly on this part of Ukraine. For example, the most important one that is not connected with the military situation is that there was some kind of military exchange, prisoners exchange. The Russians managed to return three pilots that were as prisoners for more than 1 year, and the Ukrainians managed to return up to 45 soldiers. This is a very good piece of news for both sides. The Russians managed to return officers, the Ukrainians managed to return soldiers, but there is another thing that we need to discuss about this exchange. That was, to tell the truth, the most interesting exchange since the beginning of the special military operation. And I can call this that was exchange of war criminals, because reading quotes, because the Ukrainian sources are saying that Ukrainians were planning to use those three pilots as the main witnesses of Russian crimes, military crimes, war crimes on the territory of Ukraine. And maybe that was the reason why Zelensky visited the Hawk when he was talking and telling them that soon he would exchange and return these pilots to Russia, because understand the pilots is the type of people who are bombing, who's using aircrafts to bomb, and sometimes they can bomb, maybe by mistake or something like this, the cities and of course the residential areas. So the Ukrainians were planning to use them as the main factor to blame Putin as like war criminal or something like this. But from the other side, we understand that Ukrainians returned, that 45 soldiers were returned to Ukraine, and the Russians are saying that those were the stormtroopers and the forces of Azov forces who was captured in Mariupol. So that was, we can say, reading quotes, also war criminals, but from the Ukrainian side, who were killing and torturing the civilians inside of this town, according to the Russian sources. So it was very interesting exchange. And we can say that both parties reduce the risks of being blamed as the military, like as war criminals in the future. Very interesting part. Another interesting update are coming from Energodar. The Russian sources are saying that they entirely stopped the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. And we understand that the Russians are ready before the beginning of the greatest counteroffensive operation from the Ukrainian side in this area. And this is very interesting because another interesting update are coming from Crimea. The Russians reported they managed to shut down another Grom 2 rockets, Grom 2 missiles. As you know, these Grom 2 missiles is the technology of the Ukrainians. And if we try to calculate the distance, we're gonna see that the shortest distance for these rockets is around 250 kilometers. So this is a very nice technology that Ukrainians managed to obtain and to get during the special military operation. It's almost like Iskander, and I believe that intensifying of usage of this type of missile will be increased. I'm sure that these missiles are produced somewhere abroad, not on the territory of Ukraine, or somewhere in the western part of Ukraine, where the Russians can't reach, or at least the Ukrainians have chances to shut down the Russian missiles. And about the shutdowning of the Russian missiles, for example, the Ukrainians reported that during the previous 24 hours, as a result of previous wave of Russian missile attack, they managed to shut down Dagger using the Patriot air defense system. The Russians haven't commented this situation, haven't posted any piece of information about that, or they even haven't tried to give their own evidence or to tell that it wasn't like Dagger missile. But anyway, we understand that before the greatest counteroffensive operation, even a small single victory, even like this, is a very nice opportunity to increase the spirit of the Ukrainian forces. And now let's talk about the Ukrainian forces. The Western deployment map has been updated, and according to this map, we see that most of the storming brigades and brigades that the Ukrainians are planning to use as the attack fist during upcoming counteroffensive operation were redeployed closer to the combat line. Currently, there are few groups of those forces, and one group is located on the southeast of the Dnipropetrovsk, this town. And as you can see, the Ukrainians moved 33rd Brigade, 88th Brigade, 47th and 60th Brigade, and 116th Brigade in this area. As you can see, according to this map, this brigade used to located in the vicinity of Poltava. So we saw that during this week, the Ukrainians made a process to move. And as we understand, based on this map, of course, it doesn't mean that maybe it's 100% correct information, but based on that, we see that these brigades, the Ukrainians are going to use attack in direction of Zaporozhye area. And those brigades will be used to attack in direction of Tokmak and later in direction of Melitopol, and possibly in this direction as well, trying to cut and blockade Russian forces from the mainland that the Russians would try to send to, let's say, not to prevent the Ukrainians' progress. And these forces that located on the north of, let's say, Zaporozhye power plant, there are too many forces, too many brigades. I'm not sure that the Ukrainians are going to use all of them to cross Dnipro, but who knows? Who knows what kind of crazy plan they have for upcoming counter-offensive operation. But as we can see, there is 63rd, there is a 31st, there is a 117th, 118th, there is a 32nd, and there is a 82nd Air Assault Brigade. And as you can see, these brigades are located on the north of Energodar, Zaporozhye power plant. We know that yesterday Russians announced about evacuation from this area, and this town, Energodar, this town where we can find the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, also was included into the list of evacuation zone. So possibly the Ukrainians are going to use this significant number of brigades to cross Dnipro River and to attack this area. So as you can see, this is the very broad frontline attack. And another group of Ukrainian forces are located in the north of Kherson, in the vicinity of Nikolaev and Odessa, and there are no changes on the ground. These brigades are located at the same area as we could see months ago, week ago or something like this. But anyway, as we understand, possibly those forces will be used to attack this Kinbur ground, this area, to unblock Nikolaev port. So it's complete speculation, of course, from my side. Nobody knows the exact plans of the Ukrainians, but anyway, the number of brigades, their disposition, their location, the events about evacuation, about Zaporozhye power plant, about almost every single day from attack from the Ukrainian side in direction of Crimea, tell us about significant plan, very difficult plan, and this is going to be very interesting. Of course, this is going to be very, very interesting operation from the Ukrainian side. Anyway, we'll see what the Russians are able to do, or maybe they're not able to do anything. Anyway, we'll see. Also, the Western deployment maps show a very interesting update, very interesting progress of the Russians on the north of Bakhmut. As you can see, this update was included just in the latest update of the map. As you can see, the Russians managed to develop their attack from Berkhovka in direction of Novomarkova. We can find this update on the Western sources map, and the Western source map has been updated, included this update maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we see that the Russians developed this bridgehead and that they have also prepared before the next steps of clashes and battle for Bakhmut and the vicinity of Bakhmut in this area. And now let's talk a little bit about the report of Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. They gave us today some numbers, and let's start from the Kupiansk and Liman frontlines. There are no changes on the ground, as you can see, and the level of losses of the Ukrainians in both these two front lines is around 110 soldiers, 9 armored vehicles, and 3 artillery systems. Without any changes on the ground, the Russians reported that they tried to attack the same brigades like 14th Mechanized, 92nd and 101st Brigade of Territory Defense. We stopped receiving any updates from Bilogorovka, as if the battle for Bilogorovka has ended, and we still haven't received any piece of information, any confirmation of any progress of the Russians in this area. The last progress we heard was that the special forces Akhmat managed to establish control over this industrial zone, but as you can see, neither of the map have been updated since it has been updated since that moment. So I believe that possibly those forces were forced to step back, or maybe we will receive more updates later. But the Russians are saying that during the previous 24 hours they attacked the positions of Ukrainian forces in Kramatorsk and in Mariinka, in Slaviansk. The 66th Brigade was attacked in Slaviansk. The 54th Brigade was attacked in Kramatorsk in this area, and 54th Brigade is the main brigade that located on the north of, let's say, Verkhnykamiansk Lysychansk coal refinery, and they're located here. So possibly that the Russians try to attack the reserves. Anyway, we see that the Russians are trying to solve the issue with Bilogorovka, but currently they still haven't reached some progress, and all the attempts was, at least for now, a little bit unsuccessful when talking that they can't provide us any result. But I believe that they will improve themselves and they will increase the pressure, and sooner or later this bridgehead will be taken by the Russians. We discussed Donetsk front line and the loss of Ukrainians on Donetsk, and let's move to the South Ukraine and South Donetsk area. The Russians reported as a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost 90 soldiers, 6 armored vehicles, and 1 artillery system. Furthermore, the Russians report about destroying 1 ammo depot in the town by the name of Velika Novoselovka, just a local event. Of course, very important, but anyway, without any changes on the ground as well. And when talking about Zaporozhye area, there were no updates on the ground as well. The Ukrainians, I believe, have already completed their accumulation of forces, and some Ukrainian sources are saying that Ukrainian forces in this area expect just one thing: to receive an order, and then they will rush and they will push their offensive operation. That's it. There is nothing else that stop or can delay the counter-offensive operation, just to receive the order. And for now we don't know who exactly is going to give this order. I believe that the NATO officers, but for now they still haven't given this order. And when talking about Kherson, the activities in this area were reduced till almost like zero. The Russians are saying that Ukraine lost 35 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles, and 1 artillery system as a result of air artillery duels and something like this, without also any changes on the ground. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.